by way of thanking our co-sponsors, just mention very briefly the genesis of this, which is that when the French Consul General here in Boston, Professor suggested that we might put together an event with Plantu, the Monde editorial cartoonist and founder of Cartooning for Peace, I was very excited because, of course, the issue of free speech, tolerance, the power of cartoons to provoke, to raise questions, to lead the debate, has been one very much that's been part of political culture in Europe for the past decade. We were delighted to have our colleagues at the Center for Middle Eastern Studies co-sponsor the visit, and I should also thank Ann Miller from the Cultural Services of France and Ethical Services. I'm going to introduce our panel moderator to you, who will introduce the panel and our panelists. William Gamson is with us today, and we're delighted. He is professor of sociology at Boston College. He's also the director of the Media Research and Action Project at BC, and is the author of the very wonderful Talking Politics, a book that examines the way that regular people discuss politics and around controversial issues. And one of the issues that that book examines is the Arab-Israeli conflict, which I think our panel will touch on today. And in Bill's book, he also uses cartoons to get people to discuss. So in addition to his general interest and insights on politics, I thought his own work on cartooning, on issues of conflict, has been made him absolutely the most appropriate moderator for the panel. So I will now turn it over to Bill, and thank you for his
Thank you.
presence.
I'm delighted to be here. I doubt that I need to convince anyone in this audience that political cartoons are a serious business. In fact, you could say it's a hazardous profession. You can get killed doing it. And I think their power comes from their special ability to convey a frame or a way of thinking about an issue. And one of the part of the power of cartoons is they use multiple framing devices, what literary folks call tropes. So in a single cartoon, you can have a central metaphor, depictions of various actors, catchphrases, and visual images, each one reinforcing the underlying way of thinking. And we're very fortunate today in having a panel with some of the best practitioners in the world. And the frames they convey in their cartoons promote conflict resolution and challenge war and militarism in its various forms. In other words, they are peace frames in Cartoons for Peace. There's a lot to be said about each of the panelists, but I'm going to keep my introductions short, following alphabetical order, after which I will turn things over to Plantu, who will, and I'll slip out into the audience. Since you're last in alphabetical order, that works out well. So let me start with Khalil Abu Arafeh. He was born in Jerusalem, and he started out pursuing a career in architecture, earning an MA in the Ukraine. Artists and cartoonists, as you'll notice, need to think about a day job. He started publishing cartoons under the pen name Ghassan. His activism during the First Intifada landed him in an Israeli prison on various occasions. In addition to his political cartoons, he was head writer for the local version of Sesame Street. He's pursued a number of other interesting projects as well, but the role that is most relevant for this panel is that since 1994, he has been editorial cartoonist for Quds, a leading Palestinian daily newspaper. And in that role, he has shown great courage in targeting the misdeeds of Palestinian officials as well as Israeli ones. Daryl Cagle grew up in California, and after graduating from UC Santa Barbara, he moved to New York, where he worked for 10 years on the Muppets. Sesame Street Muppets, you may be beginning to see a little theme here. He illustrated various related products, and he's illustrated lots of books, but what is most relevant for us is his work as an editorial cartoonist. He started his own syndicate, Cagle Cartoons, and edits an annual book, The Best Political Cartoons of the Year. His current work includes being the editorial cartoonist at MSNBC. That's Daryl. Jeff Danziger was born in New York, and he still lives there, based at the New York Times, but he has found some ways of getting out of the city. He's a Vietnam veteran and found his way to Vermont, where, among other things, he taught journalism and writing to high school students, and his journalism career included a 10-year stint on the Christian Science Monitor. For those of us who, like myself, consider the second Bush administration a national disaster, Danziger has been an eloquent spokesman. His cartoon anthology, Wreckage Begins with W, says it all. Uri Fink was born and raised in Israel and went to the Bezalel Academy of Art and Design. I think it would be fair to say that he is more of a graphic storyteller than an editorial cartoonist. His first comic book was published when he was 15, Sabra-Man. Sabra-Man is the child of parents killed in the Holocaust who comes to Israel after the war and becomes a secret agent. His special transplanted atomic brain gives him radioactive superpowers.
Where did you get that?
Hey, you know, all on the internet.
So maybe pictures of me next? Okay.
Uri's most famous comic series, Bang, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
This is Bang, is about the adventures of a gang of typical Israeli teenagers. Some of his many other comic books include such intriguing titles as Super Schlumper, about a superhero dressed in pajamas. The Jungle Book parodies Israeli politics. Jean Plantureux, better known by his pen name Plantu, originally planned to study to be a doctor before he enrolled in drawing courses in Brussels. When he got smart enough to realize that the world needed a great political cartoonist more than another doctor, he returned to Paris, good move, and began a long career as a political cartoonist for Le Monde, going all the way back to 1972 during the Vietnam War. Earlier in the decade, he celebrated the publishing of his 15,000th cartoon and his 30th anniversary with Le Monde, and there have been numerous exhibitions and celebrations of his work since then. Plantu has been the ringleader of the Cartooning for Peace project, which is the stimulus for this panel. And we're very fortunate to have such a panel, and I will turn the floor over to Plantu, who will begin the discussion of the limits to free speech, culture, politics, and cartoons in the US, Europe, and the Middle East. And I'm going to sit where I can see the cartoons.
Thank you. We can speak about the freedom of speech because it's our job, and we can answer all the questions you have because about what is a picture, what is the language, what is the dove we have in the earth, because we would like to make not little dove so smiling for the future in Middle East. Yes, we can do that, but the dove is not inside our cartoonist. The dove is not inside the cartoon. The dove is your debate, and we propose exhibition, conversation, a lot of cartoon like that, and then the debate is for the democracy and the future. And without picture, we have no debate. You can debate with article, with intellectual, but with the picture, you can say so much, because you are directly in my brain, in my cartoons, in your brain. And it sits like a baby show, because we can, when I can show you something I made, it was it is a long time. I was in Tunisia, and I remember it was so interesting about the language of the language of the picture. And with when I was in '91 in Tunisia, I was with nobody. Ooh, ooh. Oh, we can do that like that or not? Yes. Control F. Yes. And I was in Tunisia, and Yasser Arafat, leader of PLO of Palestine, would like to have an appointment with me. And with the pen, he was able to draw the future of the Middle East. He was not able by the mouth, by the article, to say, I recognize the Israel people, but by the picture. And Shimon Peres in Jerusalem, the year after, before Oslo, it is the first paper who was written the two signatures of Shimon Peres and Arafat. And I understood it was a new language, and with my friend and with my Kofi Annan from when he was General Secretary, we understood it was a good language to transgress what is forbidden. And I proposed to my friend to speak about their job, because it's very interesting to know what is possible, what is allowed, what is not allowed, for example, in Palestine, in Israel. You can, Uri Fink, draw a lot of things in Israel, and when I go in the Arabic world, nobody knows you are free, so free. He is not free because he is Palestine, and there is a censorship by the Israeli army, but you are free, and you can express us what you are able to draw.
Okay, I have a presentation. Okay. Okay.
Yes. He works in Tel Aviv, and I am so surprised because he is able to draw a lot of things I'm not able to draw, I'm not allowed to draw in my newspaper.
Okay. Hi everybody, I'm Uri Fink, cartoonist from Israel. You know, I was a bit intimidated to come in some way. I represent Israel today, but as my wife said, listen, Netanyahu is prime minister, Lieberman is foreign minister, how bad can you be? Okay. So first of all, I am indeed, most of the time I do comics, but you can't be too calm in Israel and ignore all the problems. So I try all the time to have a political cartoon every now and then, and sometimes I have daily cartoons in some sites that close down. So I do practice political cartooning, and it's very important to me. This is a political cartoon I actually did in the last Bibi administration. Bibi, our prime minister, has a lot of B's in his head, and so I think the biggest B he has is he's simply a bad prime minister. Okay. This is Ismail Haniyeh. Ismail Haniyeh is the leader of the Hamas movement. The problem with Ismail Haniyeh that he's very good looking. He's good looking and he has a nice white beard. Turns him into a kind of Santa Claus, and he is indeed a Santa Claus of the Israeli militants, who makes all their wishes come true. This militant says to him, oh, I've been a good boy, so I want Arabs to kill each other, and then we can go back and settle again anywhere we want. The settlers do get a hard time from me. This is the settlers during the disengagement from Gaza really behaved, in my opinion, in the most despicable way. They were totally ignorant to all those years from the suffering of the Palestinians in the checkpoints, but once they were stopped at checkpoints because they refused to remove themselves from the settlements, they used the ultimate obscenity for Israelis, it's Nazi. But the Hamas during the last war, I couldn't ignore that as well. And during the last war, I had to do something about the way the Hamas was using their own children as shields. And this is a cartoon I did for a site from the university in Israel that was set up especially for the war. Again, our prime minister, the Bibi doll. Bibi is very versatile. He can be anywhere anything he wants. He can be a soldier, he can be left wing, he can be settler, he can even be Shimon Peres, but I'm afraid that Barack Obama doesn't seem to want to play with his Bibi doll anymore. This is a cartoon I did against Hamas again. I mean, and the UN keeps shouting at us, what are you doing? There are many civilian casualties. And the Hamas, they also have the same meeting, only in a different circumstance. They say, what are you doing? There's not enough civilian casualties. What kind of terrorist are you?
What are Qassams?
Qassams? Oh, Qassams are the rockets. Yeah, they are the rockets, the Qassam missiles. These are Batia and Sharonika, settlers in the West Bank. That simply, most of the settlers really is completely oblivious to what's going on around them. They want to lead a normal life in the middle of Hebron, so that necessitates military intervention all the time. But still, they want to live their own life. They don't care how many soldiers it takes to let them live a normal teenage life. This is a strip I did especially for the. There is always this comparison between Israel and Nazis. It really drives me crazy. So I did this strip. This is a homage to Art Spiegelman's Mouse. I assume you are familiar with Art Spiegelman's Mouse, where he draws the Jews as mice, the Nazis as cats. So I thought, what would the Israelis be? So I think the Israelis are bulls. They are bulls. You know, they come into the house, they destroy everything, they do very stupid, damaging things. But when you compare them to Nazis, that's bullshit. I'm sorry to say. Yeah.
And in France, I am not able. I'm not allowed to make smiling and joking cartoons with. He is allowed.
Yeah.
I am not allowed. It's not possible because if I do that in the same day, I am considered like anti-Semitic.
And it's even worse, you know, because I can do very nasty cartoons about French people too, you know? Okay. This is a very optimistic cartoon. They are fun, they're mental, they're the fundamentalists. Because they are our crazy, all religions, the crazy people are always the same. They hate gay people, they don't want women's rights. They're basically the same. So maybe we can get along also, everybody can get along because we are all the same. And these characters, I turned them into like 3 little Powerpuff Girls that have discussions about very stupid things while they ignore the real miseries in the world, like those poor Chinese people making the Christian guy's KKK hat that he wanted so much. Well, I had to do something about Christianity. It's simply not fair. This is, you see Jesus Christ here. Suddenly, it goes from right to left. It's in Hebrew. It kicks everybody out, you know, kicks the Roman guards, and then the director says, cut. And then the guy says, if it was any other Mel Gibson film, I would have gotten out of it like in an instant. This is about the Passion of the Christ. Also, I criticize about Islamic culture. Sometimes I turn them into the Islam into a boy band called Islam, and they have like very nice members, except one of them who's a terrorist, and he ruins it for everybody. I mean, the harmony goes. This is a cartoon I did lately. There has been riots in Jerusalem where the religious population was very angry about opening things in Shabbat. This is Shabbat men and robbing, and their major thing was throwing dirty diapers at people. That was very. Another thing in Israel, we have this tradition, very stupid tradition in Yom Kippur, to take a chicken. Some religious people, they take the chicken and go like this to repent for sins. And there's always controversy in Israel. I think this is the best solution. After the guy is finished with the chicken can do the same to him. So this is the book I did, Between War and Peace. This was published in France and in Israel. This was an autobiographical book. Here you can see in this book, it's just what the publisher ordered. It's not that I like to draw myself so much, but the publisher in the line of Persepolis, there's a trend now of doing comics about, graphic novels about people from exotic places. So he asked me to do about my life. And this is, I think, a page that describes the life in Israel, in our area. You see, this is me and my family feeling like targets eating in a restaurant, waiting every time something might happen. On the other side, we see the Palestinians, they simply live in one gigantic target. Even this guy here, the target is on him, but all the others might get hurt as well. This is Israeli peace, this is the conflict girl. The conflict girl. She's very beautiful, you see, and it has everything on it. I mean, here in America, all over the world, people watch this seductive girl with her suicide bombings, and you see the settler girl, and the policemen evacuating settlements, everything you see, and here abroad, and it's one big seductive mess, and everybody's watching her all the time. And sometimes I say maybe, you know, maybe Khalil and I can solve it very easily if not everybody would be watching so much. But if it wasn't for people like you watching, I wouldn't be invited to a nice session like this. So thank you very much. Man? Okay, who's next?
Maybe Khalil.
Khalil.
About Middle East.
Can you set Khalil up?
Yes. You prefer who? This one?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm very honored to be here. Excuse my English. I try to express myself and to talk about my work. Actually, I envy my colleague Uri that he can make fun of his leaders, even from settlers, from of Jewish religion, everything. I think I envy him. He has no. I think that he has no limits for the freedom of speech. The thing that I don't have in my country, in Palestine. You know, I work as Mr. Gibson. You told everything about me, something that I don't know maybe. I work in Jerusalem. This is the newspaper where I publish my works. It's a Palestinian newspaper, Arabic newspaper in East Jerusalem. And as you know, East Jerusalem is a town which occupied by Israel from 1967. And we under the control of Israel. Our press is under the control of Israel. Even the freedom of speech is very minimized, and we still now we have an Israeli military censor who insists to know every article, every material that can be published in this newspaper, including the cartoons. Can you actually the situation changes from time to time. It depends on the situation. If there is a critical events, so the censorship is harder, and if the situation is calm, the censorship is relatively soft. Here I publish my cartoons in the opinion page. In my presentation today, I have 3 sections about Palestine and Israel, about Palestinian affairs, Fatah and Hamas, and about international affairs. Sometimes I feel that because of the restrictions that I told you about, sometimes I feel that what I'm doing is not actually political cartoons, funny cartoons. I don't feel that my cartoons are funny. Sometimes I feel that they are full of black humor, and sometimes I feel that they are a little bit close to be as a poster maybe, and not funny cartoon. This cartoon about 2 events, the Day of Land, the Earth Day, which is 26th of May every year, and the Day of Palestinian Land, which is 30 of March every day. We celebrate this day by demonstrations, by activities to prove that Palestinian land must be for Palestinians and not be confiscated. Here, I joined these two events, and I love to draw people because I feel that the civil demonstration of the people can change everything. Personally, I believe in peaceful resistance, in passive resistance, and the movement of the people, demonstrations, and this is my beliefs. This cartoon about Joe Biden, who came to Jerusalem last month, and I think, and he thinks that he was insulted. Everybody thought that he was insulted by the Israelis when he met with Netanyahu in Jerusalem. Israel announced 1,600 apartments in the settlements in Jerusalem. And here the settlement, Ramat Shlomo, is welcoming Joe Biden. Again, this is how can small olive tree stand against the wall, the Israeli wall that that destroyed the Palestinian land. And we have, as you know, a lot of activities, civil demonstrations against this wall that participate in these activities. Palestinian people and peace activists from all over the world, from United States of America, I'm proud to say that, from Europe, and even from Israel. And again, I'm very proud to say that we have peace activists, Israeli peace activists, Jewish peace activists that come every week and participate in these activities against the war. Here I'm talking about 70 workers, Palestinians. I love to draw people, and 70 workers were captured in this refrigerator truck, which and while they were trying to cross the wall, they were looking for a job in Israel, and here and they were taken to the jail. And here's the conversation between two workers, whether it's colder in the refrigerator or in the prison. I'm skipping some cartoon because I have limited time, but in this cartoon, I'm tackling a Palestinian and Arabic issue. I'm criticizing the situation in the Arab world. In the previous year, 2009, Jerusalem was the capital of the Arab culture, and there were a lot of ceremonies and activities and festivals because of this event. But and here the Arabs are Arab members from the Arab countries are celebrating this event, but actually Jerusalem was absent. In this cartoon, I'm criticizing the leaders of Hamas. You know, we have the phenomenon of tunnels between Gaza and Egypt. Why? Because Gaza is blocked from Egypt and Israel, and there are a lot of tunnels that people smuggle everything through these tunnels from Egypt to Gaza. And unfortunately, a lot of people were killed in these tunnels because they are very dangerous. And the people who are controlling these tunnels are unfortunately the leaders of Hamas. And here one mother is crying and is shouting toward these leaders, "I want my son back." Criticizing Israel all the time, Palestinian Authority, Palestinian situation, Arab world, and Hamas. And here how Israel is not asking but demanding from the United States, from George Mitchell and Barack Obama, green light to build settlements, to attack Iran, and green light forever for everything. And this cartoon, it was the summit or the meeting between Barack Obama and Netanyahu and Abbas Abu Mazen. In this cartoon, I can draw Abbas, my president, but I cannot draw him in a very funny way, such as Jean Plantu does, or Uri Fink does, or any cartoonist all over the world does. Only in a very maybe portrait, without making a lot of fun of him. Netanyahu, I can freely make fun of Netanyahu, and here I'm drawing Netanyahu with a lot of settlements. Thank you very much.
Who do you want next?
Yes?
You want me? Alrighty.
And after, if you have questions, we are here about that, because I am sure there is a lot of questions we are able to answer if you want.
I'm the cartoonist for MSNBC.com, and my cartoons run in about 850 newspapers and just about half of the daily newspapers in America. And, oops. Well, I was hoping I could hop ahead, but no. This is the kind of stuff I did early in my career that I was going to skip just now, but it doesn't want to skip. I started off as an illustrator. It's an illustration for an article about Botox. So I do a line drawing, and then I color it in, and there it is in the magazine. And I do these books that are compilations of editorial cartoons that you get in your local bookstore. And I do this website with MSNBC. That is the top cartoon site on the web, and probably more people see my cartoons there than in the newspapers. This is how the newspapers get their cartoons from us. And this is what my cartoons are like. I like to draw cartoons that have no words. That's more of an international style, I guess, than an American style. American cartoonists tend to be pretty wordy. But for me, from my point of view, I think there's a kind of a poetry to editorial cartoons. If you can use a symbol like the panda bear, you know, is China, and the dollar is falling and dollars aren't tasting so good anymore. China and Google. We like to use cliches and symbols in order to make the image simple, because the goal is to hit people on the head from the editorial page and be blunt and clear immediately, and be the most powerful thing on the page. Wheelchair for the old space shuttle and for the mail, Fidel Castro. One thing that is cool about being an editorial cartoonist is that the world gives us our characters. Unlike a comic strip cartoonist who has to work for decades to get people to know his characters, and then once you do, oh, here's George Bush marking his territory. Once you get to know the character, then the character just acting in character is fun. And so a character like George W. Bush is fun. Once these characters achieve some depth and you know what they're thinking with just a little bit of body language, then it is wonderful. Here's Obama playing a better game than Hillary. Hillary just wouldn't get out of that race. Hillary is just a wonderful character, and I was disappointed that she didn't win, because she's so much better for cartoons. Obama is really pretty dull, and Hillary has all that wonderful baggage in the relationship with Bill, and you know that she's just seething angry at times, and a little bit of body language expresses that. This is when they were both selling their books at the same time. And I drew this when Obama won. Obama is not as much fun as I would like. It would be really good for me if he would have sex with his interns. Of course, what we all, Massachusetts. This is basically how I draw Obama. Here he's getting stuck in Afghanistan. I do a rough pencil sketch. I do line art, which is what most people see in the newspapers. Most newspapers print black and white line art. Then I put in color for the internet and for the few newspapers that print color. Here are the Democrat lemmings running off the healthcare cliff. And again, this is what I do. I tighten it up in line and I color it for the web. And this is all you Harvard grads. Obama is just kind of dull, and I suffer with that. We have a kind of a cartoonist groupthink that goes on. As time goes by, characters evolve, and you have to kind of pay attention to what the other cartoonists are doing with the characters. Because kind of a groupthink caricature will evolve that you're kind of bound to, because people expect your drawings to be the character that they know. They want Obama to have the big ears. And this is how the health care bill became law. Another wonderful thing that cartoonists have is the donkeys and the elephants. And again, I love to take advantage of all these cliches because it makes my cartoons simple. Cartoonists who object to the cliches are always the wordy ones that have too much explanation in their cartoons, I think, are just not nearly as powerful. But, you know, over time, the donkey and the elephant become my donkey and elephant. And I just love that. So basically how you draw the donkeys, again, that's my process. One wonderful thing that we have in California is we have this flag with the bear on it. And gosh, that carries a whole lot of weight for me. So when we have forest fires in California, when it rains in California, it's a disaster. California's out of money, doesn't want to listen to reality. Here's the legislature doing their work, and again. And how we feel about it, and again. Drowning in red ink, and maybe we'll legalize marijuana and gay marriage. This one phenomenon that editorial cartoonists face is that editors like cartoons that express no opinion. Really, the model, I think, is Jay Leno. Jay Leno tells funny topical jokes about the news, but you really don't know what Jay Leno's opinions are. He makes jokes about the news without expressing an opinion. That is exactly what most editors want from cartoonists. In fact, we have a derisive term for these funny little cartoons that express no opinion. We call them Newsweek cartoons. This was a popular one because this one isn't going to offend anyone with my opinion. High gas prices cartoons we have to draw all the time. In fact, this one was so, we printed so widely that I drew it again. Here it was 2 years before. And here it is 2 years before that. You know, when stories like Israel and Palestine that go on forever, every darn stinking metaphor is used. That poor little dove has been killed in so many ways, squashed, pureed, stuck in the blender, barbecued, blasted. There are only so many things you can do to a dove. The same is true with these gas prices. You know, you pay an arm and a leg, you get the mortgage to pay your gas. How many darn things can you do with gas prices? So for me, with my emphasis on character, the gas pump kind of became a character. And you know, with a character, you could do character humor, and the character acting in character then becomes rewarding because you know who the character is. So over time, my gas pump kind of evolved into my own gas pump character, and she kind of became a bitchy character. We got to know her. Everyone always asks us what cartoons give you trouble, and do you ever apologize for a cartoon? Here's one that gave me trouble that I apologized for. So Uncle Sam, who is us, is the abused spouse, and he says, I fell down the stairs. Maybe she hits me sometimes, but only because I make her mad. It's my fault. I love her so much. I know she'll change. And she says, shut up. I thought that was funny. Boy, the nasty mail I got on this one from all these abused spouses who thought I was not taking them seriously, who'd say, these were all the same arguments that I used, that I said when I was in my abusive relationship, and how you minimized me and how terrible you are. So much anger from all these people. So I apologize for this. I'm sorry. I still think it's funny, but I'm sorry. I'd like to know how to skip ahead here. Let me give it a shot. I'll tell you real quickly, this is a cartoon from a cartoonist that we represent from Chile, and I sold it to a high school textbook, and the high school textbook printed it real big on a page and explained the cartoon, said that this cartoon means everybody in the world loves burgers. And I tell people, when you're around the world, hamburgers are Americans. Here are some examples. Because Americans don't know that they're hamburgers, and so what you would think would be a simple universal language of art is not as universal as you think, and lots of things are misunderstood. Get into some that cause trouble, give you the idea of where the limits are. Yes, the boys saw that Brokeback Mountain movie and they're playing cowboys. When generally the cartoons that get people angry are cartoons like this. People get angry about taste. We don't really have censorship limitations, except I think for where you get more into the area that it's going to bother people, like kids and anything sexual in the same cartoon, then the mail comes in. I drew this on the 3rd anniversary of 9/11, and I learned that was too soon. I got plenty of angry mail, but they were setting up all these big celebrations in New York. It was like this grand 9/11 festival, and I thought that was kind of in poor taste. So what cartoonists do is they exaggerate. I just exaggerated to more poor taste, and this was not appreciated. Hey, let's play Army. Okay, you get naked and I'll get the bullwhip and electrodes. This was my Abu Ghraib cartoon. You criticize the Army, and then all the Army people get angry and write letters. And this one was interesting. This was Condi Rice, and when she got the job from Colin Powell, I thought, well, she's stepping into some big shoes. Boy, they ran this every night on Fox News on Hannity as an example of racist cartoonists. They love to spank the cartoonists on Hannity. And I wasn't thinking racist, I was just thinking big shoes to fill. But you never quite know. Anytime you draw Speedy Gonzales, boy, do you get mail. This one generated a ton of mail. I thought there were all kinds of great similarities between George Bush and Osama bin Laden. Boy, people were offended by comparing our great President George W. Bush with that murdering bastard Osama bin Laden. But I'll move quickly through that. This one, Bert and Ernie getting their gay marriage. I used to work for the Muppets, and we all knew Bert and Ernie were gay. Anyway, Christian Right organized protests around the newspaper, and they actually had demonstrations about this cartoon.
Where?
In Hawaii, when they were considering gay marriage in Hawaii. Just about anything gay. The Supreme Court approved gay sex in Texas. This cartoon my newspaper refused to print. I drew this on the day that the Supreme Court decided that George W. Bush would be president in 2000, and I didn't care too much for that, so all the justices who voted to make George W. Bush president, I kind of defaced them a little bit. I guess that was going too far. Newspaper wouldn't deal with that. No, that was the Honolulu Advertiser, Gannett. MSNBC lets me do whatever I want. They're great. This I drew after Hurricane Katrina, and boy, I got mail from racist rednecks who said, everybody that's doing the looting after Katrina is black, and what a PC bastard you are for not making them all black. That was a heck of a lot of crazy redneck bastards. So I never know what to expect. This was when they were picking the Pope, and the cardinals say, we don't really elect the Pope, it's God who chooses the Pope through us. And so that was my way of drawing that. Okay, well, God who chooses the Pope through them. People don't like that. You criticize the church, criticize the Pope. Even cartoonists are all jumping on the Pope now. I think everybody is so used to seeing Pope cartoons that we've kind of grown numb. Here's Tiger Woods getting crucified by the press. Anytime you use a cross, anytime you use a Christian reference, they go after you. I have used up my time. Thank you so much.
Can you find mine on? Can you find those on?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. This is one I did after the Danish cartoonist Flap came in. If you always wanted to be a cartoonist, this is your lucky day because the regular cartoonist didn't show up today. Oops. And I'll just mention that one of the things you can do when you do these self-reference cartoons, reference to yourself as a cartoonist, is it's always very clever because actually a great many people would like to do it until they sit down with a piece of blank paper and it's harder than it looks. The other thing I want to point out is it's clever for a cartoonist to put it, if you're not sure about the original idea being that good, put a lot of little extra stuff around the outside. What I just the arrow? This one? Oh, okay. I am probably one of the only working cartoonists that's actually been in a war, if you can call Vietnam a war. It was more like a mess, but I always like to go to war scenes there for people who don't know exactly what's going on and make it as serious as I possibly can. One of my heroes is the great Second World War cartoonist, and after the Second World War, Bill Mauldin, and who did the Willie and Joe series. If you're not familiar with that and you're interested in cartoonings at all, you should look up Bill Mauldin. He died about, I think about 4 years ago. But he was such a master at it that he actually got George S. Patton mad at him, and then George S. Patton's staff was told the general, "Listen, leave him alone. The GIs like it." So this is in the people caught in the middle of this war, who are always the part of the story that's never really told enough. This is one of two cartoons. I'll go to the next one first. One of the things that a cartoon can do is put you in a scene that you probably are not going to be able to see as a photograph. Although with cell phones and cameras in them, that's not going to be the case as much anymore. This is a shooting of a journalist in Russia, Anna Politkovskaya, very brave journalist who wrote very strong reporting about the Russian brutal treatment of the Chechens and Ingushetia and various other places. And she was shot by a bunch of, at least according to me, a bunch of Putin's thugs in the stairwell of her apartment building. And this got people, did get some interest in it. And for a while, the Putin people laid off. And then last year they shot a human rights activist and the journalist who was with her. One of the nice things about cartooning for peace is that it gets cartoonists to travel around to different cities. I've been in Moscow, and this is not a bad representation of a winter day in Moscow. And if you can do the scene and fix it in people's mind at the moment when the news event took place, that's kind of a good thing to get across. And this last one is the Russian bear, because all Russians are bears, according to us, who has traded a string of sausages and sort of not realizing that he's also given away for this security and plenty of food a good deal of his personal freedom. Okay, thank you.
I think if you have questions, we can answer what you want.
Well, Khalil said that he envied Uri because he didn't have to have as much censorship as cartooning. But there appears, for one reason or another, to be a great deal of censorship that you both share in that you both vilify Hamas. Hamas is the democratically elected government of the Palestinian Legislative Council. They exercise their right under the UN Charter to resist military occupation. And they've done many positive things in Gaza. However, there doesn't appear to be any cartoons other than defamatory cartoons of Hamas, even though Israel, of course, has used human shields. It's been well documented. Half the people killed in Gaza were children, etc., etc. Is this self-censorship or official censorship from the PA and from the Israeli government that prevents any positive or Hamas viewpoints being expressed in the editorial cartoons there?
It is simply, you're not even misinformed, that's all. In Gaza, they took it illegally.
No, in the 2006 elections, they won the election by a wide margin. And then there were provocations by Israel, including the blockade, as well as multiple military assaults, as well as assassinations. I don't see any of that in your cartoons.
I think the bottom line reason is both of them strongly disagree with you.
Right. So why aren't there any, so that's a form of censorship right there.
No, it's their point of view.
Right, but you don't allow any type of cartoonists that would represent Hamas's views.
They tell their own point of view. They're not in the business of allowing other people to say something or not say something.
I wanted to tell you something about Hamas. Hamas won the elections, I agree with that, but after a few months, Hamas fought against her people, and there were more than 600 Palestinians killed in the battle of Hamas to conquer Gaza and to control Gaza without any share, without any partnership, with any Palestinian group. So it was a massacre. Hamas committed massacre in Gaza in order to control Gaza. And now Hamas is not a democratic regime. Hamas in some way is practicing the same thing that Israel is practicing. Nobody consider that Hamas is a democratic regime in Gaza. So my role as a cartoonist is to criticize the policy of Hamas and defend the innocent Palestinian people in Gaza and in West Bank and in Jerusalem and everywhere. I can't defend the brutal policy of Hamas anyway. Nobody can defend.
Hamas has widespread support there.
Hamas?
Hamas has widespread support there.
Hamas what?
Hamas has widespread support.
Yes. Widespread?
Hamas has a large constituency and they have many legitimate grievances.
It
They
was.
are, as you both agree,
This was before the takeover, before Hamas committed the massacre in Gaza.
when they were provoked by a confrontation with outside intervention.
I think we're going to,
Come on.
yeah. I think we're getting away from the discussion here, so there's a
I would be
comment over
happy
there.
to argue with the Hamas cartoonist Yes,
Oh, I
after
would
he
too.
gets
Why
out
don't
of
why don't we
prison,
have
you
one
know,
here?
okay?
Why don't we have one
Very-
here? That's a good point. I agree with you 100%. And that's exactly what we should do. We should let Hamas speak and then not be insensitive.
Okay, there's a question over there.
And why
I'd like to
why
ask
not- why not-
Khalid and Uri maybe the same question. I noticed in the cartoons that I saw today that at least in Uri's cartoons there's a tremendous core element of humor and self-parody in terms of the state of Israel. Somehow I've seen a lot of Palestinian cartoons, I've seen a lot of cartoons from the Arab and Muslim world. Unfortunately, I think the preponderance of those cartoons, and I don't want to resurrect a straw man here, but I think it's fairly obvious if you go to the internet and look at them, from even moderate Qatar to Jadida al-Hayat in the Palestinian Authority, that there is a very strong anti-Semitic tone. Jews are portrayed as, and it's not humorous, it's not funny. I think Uri pokes fun at everybody, and I think we appreciate that. But, for example, the cartoon of Anne Frank in bed with Hitler, the cartoon of Ariel Sharon a la Goya chewing off the head of Palestinian babies. There's a certain, I wasn't rolling in the aisles with laughter when I see the Muslim and Arab cartoons. To me, it was reminiscent of der Stürmer in the 1930s. So, for example, when you did your cartoon of Ramat Shlomo, at the same time, the Palestinian Authority essentially was commemorating a town square in Ramallah called Maghrabi Square, which commemorated a Palestinian terrorist who killed Jewish civilians. Did it ever occur to you to do a satiric cartoon about the dedication of that town square? Or if you had done that cartoon, would you have been threatened by Fatah or Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade? In other words, is there a certain line that you can't cross when satirizing your own society?
I don't see any way of balance between the settlements in Jerusalem and the square in Ramallah. Israel is building.
Could one be an
Israel
satire?
is building Israeli settlements on the Palestinian land against the international law, against the human being law. This nobody can agree. Nobody can approve these acts.
No, but for
And whether
example,
somebody in Ramallah wants to build any square, let's build any square. I can't see any comparative between these two actions. I agree with you that in the Arab press there are some anti-Semitic cartoons. I don't agree with them. I personally respect Jews and Jewish culture and Jewish history, but in the same time, I ask that Jews and Israel to respect Palestinian people and Arab people and Arab Palestinian rights, and to stop violence, to stop occupation, and to withdraw from the Palestinian territories. So it's a conflict.
I have to say that after looking at Khalil, Khalil's illustrations really convey the way to make peace in the Middle East, because what the cartoons that you describe are exactly what Hamas is trying to do, use violence to solve this solution. I mean, Khalil's cartoons are not violent, they are very sensitive, they are very descriptive, and they are very effective. And that's the way to do this. I mean, if we do this anti-Semitic cartoon, it's not the way to talk. You know, it's not the way to create dialogue.
No, my question was about humor.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any place for humor in Palestinian cartoons, as there are
Yeah,
in
of course.
Israeli cartoons?
There is humor, but our humor is different from the Israeli.
Yes, I've seen that humor.
Yeah, we have black humor. We have black humor.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
I'm going to use my position as moderator to ask a question here that I'm sure that this is for all the cartoonists here, but there's a lot of use of irony in cartoons. And my experience in using cartoons to convey ideas is that it is often misunderstood. It is what's intended as irony, and what seems like pretty obvious to me is intended ironically, is taken literally, and I'm wondering how often, and I believe actually in some of you gave examples of that as you were talking about your career. I wonder how much of a problem that is. Aren't you, when you use irony, don't you often find that you are misunderstood and taken as if you were talking literally?
Well, it's our job to be clear in making our points, so when we're misunderstood, we're not doing our jobs. So I would say someone who's often misunderstood is a lousy cartoonist.
Yeah, but I think there is a limit. I can tell you, during the whole Iranian, the Iranian as a response to the Muhammad cartoons, they did a contest about cartoons about the Holocaust. That was that was a lovely contest, a lot of good works. So some guy in Israel decided to answer them with starting the first anti-Semitic Jewish cartoon contest. It was open only to Jews to draw anti-Semitic cartoons. So that was very, very, I mean, I thought it was great. I think it was great. I immediately called up my friend. I said, well, I have to be part of that. He made me one of the judges. And then Art Spiegelman also heard about this initiative, and he became another judge. And it was great, you know, but some people didn't get it. And people said, what, the Jews are doing anti-Semitic cartoons? What is this crazy? They didn't get the joke. I said, so I don't know what to do about these people. Some people can't get the joke. Okay.
It's like, you know, you notice some people are stupid. You ever notice that?
So some people are stupid, so there you go. And they say some people will think that the Jews are admitting that they are really trying to control the world and all that. Okay, these people, what can I do? But it was actually quite a big success, and we even got a talk back once from a guy in Egypt. He said, I heard the Jews are going to take over the world, and I hope it happens soon. So that was quite fun.
Other questions out there? Yes, over here.
There have been cases in Europe whereby cartoonists have raised a lot of discussions also in the Islam world by their cartoons and were heavily condemned. And I have a question for Khalil, is what is, if we refer to the title, The Limits of Free Speech, in how far is the religion and elements in your religion a limit to free speech in the cartoons?
Actually, there are a lot of limits in my cartoons. Not only in my cartoons, but in. I'm saying that there are a lot of limits in my cartoon, not only in my cartoons, but in our culture in general. And a lot of these limits are controlled or are taken from the religion. Because there is a religion, there are a lot of limits. Everything which is connected to the religion is considered in our society something untouchable. If you tackle these issues which are religious, it means that you are making something wrong with the God. And this is, in fact, by itself, it's dangerous. So the problem is there are a lot of issues that we have to deal with, but the issue how. And for this reason, myself, I'm talking about myself and other cartoonists, we are trying to find some way which is sometimes symbolic, which is sometimes maybe ambiguous, in order to avoid these limits, which are religious, and to address and to tackle and to deal with these issues, which are very critical and sensitive.
And these limits apply also when the cartoonist in Europe is making a cartoon on the situation in your own country? Because that was the whole debate about cartoonists in Europe making cartoons about the Islam situation. So the limits do not only apply for yourself in your country, but for other cartoonists who also make a cartoon on your country?
I agree with my colleague Jeff Danziger that the event that you are talking about, the cartoon of the Danish cartoon was used or maybe misused by many groups from all over the world, Muslim groups and non-Muslim groups. So a lot of groups didn't want that the relationship between Denmark and even Europe and the Muslim world continues. So they used that event in order to destroy this relationship. And unfortunately, many people were died because of this issue. If you look through this event, I don't feel that what happened is worth it. I mean, many 100 years ago, Prophet Muhammad was illustrated in some Muslim books, but the situation now is different. Now we are talking about terror, about blood, war, religious war. So every action, every maybe cartoon, everything which is tackling with the religion can be misused and can be explode in such way. So the issue is not only religion or limits, but the picture in general.
And it was the reason we made Cartooning for Peace, because after the Danish explosion, the polemic against the Danish cartoonist, we built a foundation. The name is Cartooning for Peace, with Kofi Annan when he was General Secretary of United Nations. And then it was we began conversation in debate, because the debate is the future of the democracy. We make a very strong cartoon. We make very uncomfortable cartoons, but all the debate is good for democracy. And it's very interesting, because when now a cartoonist is making a cartoon, it is a thrill religion to and now the Pope in the sentences make us laugh, and he's not so smiling, because it is not so easy with the thrill religion behind the cartoonist, and the cartoonist is now afraid. But with Cartooning for Peace, our foundation, we can organize a new view for the future of the freedom of speech. And we can, when it was forbidden to draw Muhammad, I made for my newspaper Le Monde these cartoons. I must not draw Muhammad, I must not draw Muhammad, and at the end it looks like a face, and everybody understood. And some of the readers write to me, oh, it seems like Leonardo da Vinci, and I say, oh yeah, if you want to see Leonardo da Vinci, it's better. And we have to now to be very careful. This example, I made those cartoons in Egypt, and in Egypt it was a big problem, because when it was published, there is a big manifestation against the newspaper, because they think it was against the religion. It was only a joke about two religions, the religion Islamic with the veil, and the other religion, our religion in Europe and United States, of marketing, because when the girl has a thong, maybe it's also another religion. I propose only an opinion, and we propose only an opinion, and then the best of the opinion is to invent a new reflection for the future of the picture. And we made that with Kofi Annan, because it is the beginning to be careful with other. And we want to make smiling cartoons upon the tragedy. And this example is an example from Algeria. His name is Dilem, and he makes laughing cartoons on the tragedy. I am not able to do that in Paris, because my chef editor doesn't accept, But an Algeria guy, a cartoonist, it's not a problem because they know what is the tragedy now in Algeria. Thank you.
Question over there, yeah.
Till a few minutes ago, the conversation with this lady started, I thought we have a situation similar to what happened supposedly right after World War II ended in American and Russian soldiers met across the river and started talking to each other, and the American soldier said, "We are very free in America. I can go in front of the White House and say, and say, Truman, the son of a bitch." And the Russian scratches his head and said, "I can also do something similar. I can go in front of the Kremlin and say, Truman, the son of a bitch." Basically, you seem to, you're excellent, all of you, but you seem, all of you go in one direction, and you didn't touch certain points till this lady brought it up and started discussion. You didn't touch, and humor is involving making fun of yourself, and maybe this is not funny, but the name of the symposium, shall we call it, Cartoonion, or whatever, is limits to free speech. And here is just a few things top of my head. Salman Rushdie threatened with death for writing a book, which most of the people who oppose it didn't read. Then Orhan Pamuk was threatened with jail. If he wasn't the greatest Turkish writer and eventual Nobel Prize winner, he would have been in jail for telling the truth about the murder, genocide of Armenians. The Danish cartoons were touched upon. The Swedish was recent, threatened, attempted death, and grandson of Theo van Gogh, was murdered in the street of Amsterdam, I think, for making a movie. And finally, I have some friends in Israel who are to the left and friendly with some Arabs who shared with them through Germany some information which is not widely known, namely that there was a lot of dancing in the street in Palestinian and other Arab places when 9/11 happened. And people from both Fatah and Hamas came to the freelancers and cartoonists and filmmakers who said, if you say a word about that, we know where you are, where your family lives, you're going to be all dead. This is not non-fair. So the later fun was, oh, there's only one, the same film showing children dancing in the street. There were hundreds, but they were forbidden to show. Now, all that you didn't touch, and I wonder why not? Are you afraid? Are you afraid to touch of limitation of your freedom? Why was it avoided till the last few minutes?
Who said it was avoided?
Till the last few minutes, you just laughed on the only mention of censorship, there's two mention of the censorship by the Israeli army. No other censorship was mentioned till a few minutes ago.
If I could interrupt, just briefly.
Yeah, of course.
If you go on the internet, you can go to my site and you can look at the archive of my cartoons, and then you'll be able to make a comment which you've made here with some authority, which at this point, having seen just a few, you can't make. So I suggest you do that, and I suggest you do it for everybody else. The advantage of the internet is you can go and see someone's total work. All of the things that you've requested to be criticized have been criticized. All of it has been brought up. All of it has been brought up with plenty of strength, with plenty of verve, and with plenty of vigor,
Not
and
here.
plenty of what?
Not here.
We've only been here for a short period of time. Now, if you want to hang around, I have to go back to New York, but if you want to hang around, I'm sure these gentlemen will be able to do it. I think it's an unfair criticism, knowing what you know of our work, to say that we don't do that. Of course we do. We want to gain an audience, we want to gain fans, we want to have our words out there, and we want to get it as strong as possible. You forget one thing else. There's a level above us called editors who have children and mortgage payments and tuition payments. That's the problem, sir. What?
I published
In my
the,
paper, look, Yale University did a book about the Danish cartoon. Wait. No. Yale University Press did a book about the Danish cartoons. They didn't put the cartoons in the book. I don't, why do I know, what? Did my paper? I am independent. I don't have a paper, so I can't answer that
Well, I
question.
can respond to that.
What?
MSNBC.com reproduced the cartoons, and I reproduced the cartoons in my Best Political Cartoons of the Year book and on my website. But, you know, it's true that there are limitations all over the world. Cartoonists in Cuba have never drawn Fidel Castro. One cartoonist in China dared to draw Hu Jintao. He was fired. All the other cartoonists are chilled and haven't drawn Hu Jintao since. Cartoonists in Singapore talk about how they can draw anything they want as long as it's not about Singapore. These exist all over the world. But when I'm here talking about my own work, I don't have any of that problem. Government never tells me what to draw. Even my editor at MSNBC don't. So speaking for myself, I don't have these issues. I draw cartoons about other people who have these issues, but I don't.
To answer at your question, I have a proposition. You know, when we go on a boat in France, there is a word, it is forbidden to tell this word. And maybe in the United States, I don't know, if you are in a boat, it is forbidden because superstition. You know superstition. And in France, the name is the rabbit. You must not tell the word. I was sailor, and it was a problem if I tell the name of rabbit. Everybody, superstition, we will be dead. It is superstition. It is curious superstition, but I was. The story about against the Danish cartoonist was new for us because we didn't know it was a big superstition. It is forbidden to draw Muhammad. We at the morning when we awake, we don't want. Oh, I must go against Muhammad. It's not the first. The first is against intolerance, against the priest because pedophilia, against settlement, intolerance by the settlement, intolerance by the three religions, sometimes intolerance because the war, and then it is the first. The beliefs, it's not our job, and I respect superstition. Muhammad, it is a superstition, no problem. I can draw Al-Qaeda, yes, I draw. Everybody is about the cartoonists are able to draw against Al-Qaeda. But you know, Khalil, we have a friend of he draw in Qatar. His name is I forgot his name. He draw for Al Jazeera in Qatar, and he loves of all subject, but it is a subject he is not able to criticize. It is Ben Laden. It is not allowed to draw Ben Laden. And our job with Cartooning for Peace is draw what we want, and we want all of the earth, not open the cloud. We don't want to draw against Jesus Christ. It's not. But when the Vatican is not is intolerant, we want to draw against. But open the cloud, it's not our job. And I can when I propose when I mix the three religions in a bed, I have no problem with the imam, with the rabbin, with the bishop, and one he tell we have an appointment next Thursday, and the bishop say, oh no, it's not possible, it is Kippur. And we mixed, and when we mix the three religions, we have no problem. It is a good slalom for the speech liberty. And to answer your question, all the subject was in our newspaper. All the subject. Salman Rushdie and the other, all are in the newspaper. You know, you can see the Cartooning for Peace website, and you can have a rendezvous with all the subjects.
Bravo.
I want to go back to a point that Daryl made before, because I think you are being too hard on yourself when you say if your cartoon is not understood, it's your fault. It isn't. There's a negotiation that goes on between the reader and the person who's looking at that cartoon, and that person is active. And a lot of it has to do with the idea of a framing contest, that there are different frames on an issue, and people will very frequently misunderstand cartoons if they are not really, if they don't really understand the underlying frame or way of thinking. They will translate that cartoon, give it a different meaning that fits with the frames they're familiar with. And we saw lots and lots of examples of this when we were dealing with, for example, cartoons on Arab-Israeli conflict. We presented them with different frames. The one that I'm most favorable to myself is two rights in conflict, not a conflict between right and wrong. But there were people who framed it in terms of Arab intransigence or Israeli aggression and so forth, who could not understand the cartoon that represented the two rights in conflict. And that's a very frequent problem, I think, that you have to understand your cartoons as part of this larger framing contest that's going on. So, just a comment.
I think we all work hard to draw cartoons that are not misunderstood.
Yeah.
And when they are misunderstood, we're disappointed. And we work to avoid that again.
To be great is to be misunderstood.
What I'm saying is you'll be understood by people who have that frame in their head, at least recognize it. And you will be misunderstood no matter how clear you are by people who don't understand that frame.
I always consider the provocation or the things that will annoy people. I realize my drawings will annoy people, and I treat it. I realize it's part of the materials I use when I do my work. And if I use too much of it, I simply I did the wrong job, like using too much ink or too much any other materials that I use for doing a cartoon. If I know that people will get angry at me and the provocation will take over the work, and nobody will get my idea, then I fail as a cartoonist.
Other questions or comments? Yeah.
I had another question about the I think the way I saw it, in the aftermath of controversy, like when many governments were giving their press reactions to what was happening, a lot of Western European governments said, we of course respect the right to free speech, but we urge that the cartoonists use this right in a responsible manner. And first of all, I guess, do you agree with that? And second of all, what would you say to those who argue that this kind of drive to political correctness is a way of self-censorship that's almost as bad as official censorship? Like, how can you actually limit? Like, how can you, if you're going to be responsible about what you're doing, like, how can you do it without being sort of self-censoring on yourself? I also want to ask, when you like several newspapers, reprinted the Muhammad cartoons, and I guess how could you dissociate yourself, I guess, from those who actually endorse the content of the cartoons? Because actually there were like xenophobic groups who used the cartoons as like poster child for their campaigns. And I have one last question, more broadly about free speech. Is in Europe especially, there seems to be this high-level sensitivity toward racism and anti-Semitism, for example. And in the Netherlands, there's actually a politician who's being, he's had charges pressed against him because he says he wants to ban the Quran, for example. And do you think that that's maybe counterproductive? Because, like, for example, a lot of these figures are sort of gaining more and more support, almost as if it's a result of all this attention that they're getting. And do you think it even gives them this new credibility if you try to ban them or like shut them out?
Lot of questions, you know.
Take your last question first. On PC, I think the PC issue comes up in countries that allow pretty free immigration, like the United States, Britain, France. If you have large masses of people from different nationalities, different religions, PC becomes a survival tactic. You can't go around calling people names or insulting people just for the hell of it and expect to have a society that works. So even though they laugh at PC, without those considerations, you'd have a riot on your hands.
If you were standing here screaming obscenities and we were offended, would guess that you wouldn't be invited to many of these things. The same for me. If I draw offensive cartoons, papers aren't going to reproduce them. I'm not going to be successful. There's a marketplace that is a limitation on us. That's not a matter of an editor or a red line that we can't cross. You know, we want people to be able to see what we write and respond to it the way we want them to respond to it. We can't just be offensive all the time. And one thing I think that's lost in the discussion of the Danish Muhammad cartoons is that there was the idea of a newspaper editor to hire a bunch of cartoonists to draw Muhammad. And nobody calls me and hires me to draw a cartoon about what they think. Editorial cartoonists are responsible for what we think. And if I decide to draw a cartoon, I will choose to draw that, and I'll stand behind it, and I'll apologize for it, or I'll defend it. But hiring people to draw cartoons, that's not what editorial cartooning is all about.
It was a trap because when Gillian Paston from Copenhagen proposed to 12 cartoonists to make something against Muhammad, it was a trap because it was a very serious newspaper like, for example, Washington Post or New York Times. It is so curious to propose 2 pages against Muhammad, 2 pages against intolerance, against Imam, no problem. And it was a trap, and they fall under the trap. And one of the guy of cartoonist from Copenhagen understood it was a trap. And then he refused to come with the 12 in the Gillian Paston. And he proposed this in another newspaper. The name is Politican. And in Politican, he represents Muhammad like that. And you can see it is Muhammad, a flirted Muhammad with pixel. It was a good, because it is a smiling answer to the censorship. And now we have to work. It is not a problem. It is censorship, no problem. If you know, in Morocco, it is forbidden to draw the king in Morocco, no problem. I have a friend, his name is Khalil Gedar, and Khalil Gedar in Casablanca, he drew a hand like that, and in the newspaper in Casablanca, the hand, the finger has a ring. The ring is speaking, and everybody understood it is the king speaking. It is forbidden censorship, no problem. We can do that. And our job in cartooning for peace is to make slalom against what is forbidden, against the censorship. We have no problem with the censorship. And superstition we respect, but superstition is not our job. Our job is on the earth. Superstition is upon the cloud. No problem.
I think you also have to all the time appreciate things. You know, when you draw things. I'll do my religious Jew thing. Okay. I mean, this Muhammad cartoon affair was a victory for the bad guys. Okay, for the people we are trying to fight. Because every time you draw something, it has baggage. It has something that you have to, and you can't ignore it. I mean, you can't say, okay, free speech, I can do anything I want. No, even when I draw in Israel, when I have to draw some religious Jew, it happens because there are a lot of religious Jew politicians. You have to be aware of the baggage that this thing has. You know, the black hat and everything. It's not something you can ignore, right? Everything I put in here might be considered anti-Semitic because of this, right? We got here we got this guy, a lot of black, okay, and we got this religious guy. Okay, so I can put in here anything I want. I will put here our good friend, Yasser Arafat. The amazing thing about Yasser Arafat is that he gave us so much trouble over the years, and he looks exactly like an anti-Semitic cartoon. Okay, here we go, here he is. Okay, you see? There we go, anti-Semitic cartoon. Okay, you see, this is nothing now, it's anti-Semitic cartoon, magic, you see? So, because of Arafat, okay, and even given the... So that way, every time I have to draw a religious Jew, even just any, random religious Jew, I'm very careful when I draw it, especially the nose. The nose is a very sensitive thing. So you would think, if you read my comics, that there is a large Swedish community that lives in Jerusalem and all converted, because I always draw the nose very, very small, because it's not that important to me. I don't want anybody to give the excuse to start complaining that I'm drawing anti-Semitic cartoons. So all the Jews, I draw religious Jews, I have to be very careful, because the minute I do the nose any centimeter, it seems like editors are sitting there with little rulers and measuring the nose. It's really that way, and that's what I mean. I mean, you have to, you push, you sharp, you try all the time, and thank you.
Any more questions here? Yeah.
I wanted to ask Mr. Plantu if he suffered from sort of censorship from the Sarkozy or just his director of the Monde. Est-ce que vous pensez que ça vient de votre directeur ou c'est des idées qui fait pression sur le monde quand vous publiez tout à l'heure que
Yes, there is passion. But passion is not a problem, because when I draw Sarkozy, I can make what I want, because he's a good guy for the caricature, because when I draw Sarkozy, he's very easy, because he is like a caricature, because it looks like that, big teeth, and then and 2 feet, and my cartoon is finished. And sometimes I have problems by Sarkozy, because sometimes I drew fly upon his head, and he wrote to me letters. Please, I like your cartoons, but without the. And he phoned also to my chef editors. It is not a problem, because he can do that, Sarkozy. But I am lucky, because I have chef editors, they protect me. But it is not the case in other newspapers. I have no problem by Sarkozy, because he can phone, he can write, no problem, I am protected.
Any other questions? Okay, then I think I will thank our panelists for a very interesting discussion, and thank the audience for your contributions as well. Thank you.